The little boy had always been quiet, the kind of child who blended into the background no matter where he went. At home, he didn't talk much. At school, he mostly stayed to himself. But there was one thing that made his eyes light up every single time: music. Not the loud kind, not the drum-beating songs that echoed through the school grounds. He loved the soft sound of piano keys. He loved how one touch could create a sound that felt warm, peaceful, and full of emotion. In the school hallway stood an old upright piano. It wasn't fancy. The paint was chipped on the sides, the keys had turned slightly yellow, and some of them made a little clicking sound when pressed. But to the boy, it was the most beautiful thing in the entire building. Every time he walked past it, he slowed down. Sometimes he would touch just one key, softly, so nobody heard. And then he would walk away before anyone looked. He didn't know how to explain it, but the piano felt like a friend. A friend who never made fun of him. A friend who didn't care that he was quiet or that he didn't have many friends in class. A friend who understood him without words. For months, he had been learning small melodies all alone. He didn't have a teacher. He learned from watching videos on an old phone and practicing for a few minutes whenever he found the hallway empty. Every time he managed to play a smooth note or a nice little tune, he felt proud. Not proud in a loud way, proud in the quiet way that warms you from the inside. But he never played in front of anyone. Not a single person knew how much he had practiced. One day, the school announced something big. A talent day. Students could come on stage and perform anything they were good at: singing, dancing, poetry, even comedy. The whole school buzzed with excitement. Kids started planning their acts. Some practiced dance routines during lunch break. Others rehearsed songs. Groups formed, ideas spread, and the school felt louder and busier than usual. The boy watched all of this from a distance. He listened to the announcement, held his breath for a moment, and looked toward the old piano again. A tiny idea formed in his mind. Maybe he could play. Maybe he could show the melodies he had practiced quietly in hallways. But as soon as the thought came, doubt followed. What if he made a mistake? What if people laughed? What if he froze on stage? During recess, he stood near the piano, gently touching one key. Just touching it made him feel something strong inside him, something close to courage. But the noise of kids around him brought him back to reality. He pulled his hand away quickly. Later that day, his kind class teacher noticed him staring at the stage list. She quietly walked up beside him and said, "If there's something you want to try, you should try it. You don't always need to be the loudest to be good at something." He didn't say anything back, but her soft smile stayed in his mind long after she walked away. That evening at home, he sat with the thought for a long time. He imagined himself sitting in front of the piano on stage. He imagined his fingers trembling. He imagined other students whispering, giggling, rolling their eyes. He imagined dropping his hands and running away. But then he imagined something else. He imagined playing the first note. Just one note. Clear and steady. And he imagined silence in the room after that note. He imagined people listening. That one thought stayed with him more strongly than the fear. The next morning, he took a deep breath and wrote his name on the sign-up sheet. His handwriting was small, barely noticeable, but his heart pounded as he did it. It felt like the biggest step he had taken in his life. The news spread quickly. "He's going to play?" some kids said with a snicker. "On a piano?" Another one laughed. They didn't mean to be cruel. Kids just sometimes say things without thinking. But the boy heard everything. He pretended not to, but he heard every giggle. The day before the event, he practiced extra hard. Not in the hallway. He found a small empty classroom with a keyboard. It wasn't the same as the old piano, but it was enough. He practiced the opening part again and again until his fingers stopped shaking. He practiced the middle part until he could play it with his eyes closed. And he practiced the final note, the soft, gentle one that made him feel brave. Finally, the morning of the event arrived. The school decorated the auditorium with colorful sheets and handmade posters. Chairs were arranged in neat rows. Teachers adjusted microphones on the stage. Students filled the hall with buzzing excitement. Everyone was dressed a little nicer than usual. Some kids wore shiny outfits for their dance or matching shirts for group performances. The boy sat in the third row, hands on his lap, waiting for his turn. He wore a simple shirt, nothing fancy. His mind felt heavy with nervousness. His heart kept beating faster than normal. Every time someone walked on stage, he felt a mix of excitement and fear. "I can't do this," he whispered to himself at one point. But then he looked at the piano on stage, gleaming under the lights, and felt a tiny push inside his chest, something telling him not to back out. The performances began. A group of kids danced to a popular song with confident smiles. The audience clapped loudly. Another student sang beautifully, making everyone cheer. A boy cracked some jokes and made the hall echo with laughter. Everyone seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. The boy felt smaller and smaller in his seat. Finally, it was time. His name was announced over the microphone. For a moment, the hall felt too big. His legs felt shaky as he stood up. Some students whispered and a few smirked. He walked slowly toward the piano. Every step felt long. Every breath felt heavy. When he reached the stage, he could hear a few light giggles from the back. Someone coughed with a mocking tone. Another whispered loudly, "This will be funny." Their voices weren't meant for him to hear, but he heard them anyway. He felt his face warm up and his hands turn cold. He sat down on the wooden bench. His feet didn't fully touch the ground. The piano keys waited in front of him, shining under the spotlight. He took a deep breath. Another giggle echoed from somewhere in the audience. For a split second, he wanted to run. He wanted to leave the stage and disappear. But something inside him refused to let him move. He had worked too hard, too quietly, too long. He placed his hands above the keys. His fingers trembled. His throat felt tight. The hall fell silent, but not the comfortable kind. This silence was filled with expectation, pressure, and doubt. His heart thumped loudly in his chest. He could almost hear it more than the audience. He inhaled deeply through his nose and tried to steady his breathing. He reminded himself how the piano had always felt like a safe place. He imagined that hallway where he used to practice alone. He imagined the soft light, the quiet echo, the familiar clicking sound of the old keys. He let those memories wrap around him like a warm blanket. Someone in the front whispered, "Is he scared?" Another giggled. His fingers stiffened for a moment, but then he slowly relaxed them. He remembered the note he had practiced the most, the first one. The one he visualized over and over. The one he imagined turning a noisy room into silence. He closed his eyes. Just for a second, and then he pressed the first key. At that exact moment, the story changed. But the audience didn't know that yet. They didn't know that the note was going to surprise them. They didn't know that their laughter was about to fade. They didn't know that the boy sitting in front of them was carrying hours of silent practice. Dreams he never spoke about, and a heart that had learned courage the hard way. The first note lingered in the air. Clear, soft, steady. The hall wasn't ready for what came next, and neither was the boy, but everything was about to change. The first note floated across the room like a small light in a dark place. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was clear, so clear that even the students who were whispering stopped mid-sentence. The boy kept his eyes half closed, listening to the sound echo gently inside the hall. Something inside him steadied. He felt his breath calm down, as if that one note reminded him why he came on stage in the first place. He pressed the second key, then the third. Slowly, the melody started forming. The sound wasn't shaky the way he feared. It was soft but confident, like a quiet truth finally spoken out loud. People in the first row leaned a little forward. Some teachers exchanged looks, surprised by how controlled his playing was. The boy didn't look up. He didn't dare. He focused on the keys, letting his fingers move the way they did when he practiced alone in empty hallways. With each note, his worry melted like snow under sunlight. His shoulders relaxed. His fingers started gliding instead of trembling. By the time he reached the next part of the tune, one of his favorite sections, something magical was happening in the hall. The chatter had stopped. The giggles had vanished. Even the restless kids who usually couldn't sit still were suddenly silent, eyes fixed on the stage. The music felt warm, like a soft blanket wrapped around the whole room. It wasn't a complicated piece. It wasn't something from a famous musician. It was just a simple, heartfelt melody the boy had stitched together through weeks of practice, mistakes, and late-night attempts. But the simplicity made it beautiful. Every note felt honest. A strong part came next, one that needed both hands to move quickly. A few days earlier, the boy had struggled with this section. His fingers would get mixed up. He would hit the wrong key. But now, under the bright lights and with hundreds of eyes watching, his hands moved with surprising accuracy, almost like the piano was guiding him instead of the other way around. Gasps started coming from a few students who had expected the performance to be funny, not impressive. One student even whispered, louder than he intended, "Wait, he's actually good." The teacher beside him glanced at him but didn't say anything. She was too busy watching the boy play with a small smile of pride forming on her face. The boy still didn't look up. He didn't want to lose the feeling he had right now, this mix of focus, comfort, and bravery. It felt like stepping into a world where no one judged him, where his quiet nature wasn't a weakness, and where the piano wasn't just an instrument but an old friend standing beside him. Then came the gentlest part of the melody. The hall grew so quiet that the soft sound of keys felt louder than usual. Even the air felt still. A teacher at the back slowly folded her arms, watching with a softened expression. A student who usually joked about everything lowered his head, listening without a single comment. The boy took in a long breath through his nose as he played that soft section. His chest felt warm, but not from nerves anymore, from something close to happiness. He didn't often feel proud of himself, but he did now. Not in an arrogant way. The quiet kind. The kind he always cherished. Just when people thought the melody would stay soft till the end, he surprised everyone with the sudden lift, the part that added spark to the tune. His fingers danced across the keys with a rhythm that made the audience blink in awe. The notes rose, fell, rose again, forming a wave of emotion that filled the entire hall. A few students unconsciously started smiling. A girl near the middle whispered, "This is beautiful." Another teacher nodded. Slowly, without taking her eyes off the stage, the boy finally risked a small glance toward the audience. He expected blank stares or confused looks, but what he saw made him freeze for a heartbeat. The hall wasn't laughing. It wasn't whispering. It wasn't judging. Every face he could see was watching with genuine surprise, interest, maybe even admiration. That one glance gave him a kind of strength he had never felt before. He returned to the keys with a confidence he didn't know he had. His posture straightened. His hands settled into a smooth, controlled rhythm, and his heart beat not with fear, but with purpose. He moved into the final part of the melody, slow, emotional, full of feeling. This was the part that meant the most to him, the part he practiced at night when everyone else slept. The notes felt like small stories, tiny pieces of himself he never spoke about. Every key he pressed carried a little weight from his silent childhood, his lonely moments, and every time he wished someone understood him. The audience didn't know all this, but they could feel something. A feeling they couldn't explain. Something quiet but powerful. When he reached the final note, he held it just long enough to let it sink in. The sound stretched softly through the hall, then faded into silence. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody clapped. Nobody even breathed properly. It was as if the room was waking up from a dream. Then someone in the front row started clapping. A teacher followed. Then another. Then a student. And suddenly the whole hall erupted into applause, loud, sincere, full of surprise and respect. The sound hit the boy like a wave. He blinked quickly, unsure of what to do. His heart felt too full, too overwhelmed. Some students even stood up, giving him a small standing ovation. A few of the kids who had laughed earlier now looked embarrassed. Others looked amazed. But everyone clapped. The boy looked down at his own hands, still floating above the keys, and let out a long, shaky breath. He didn't smile big. That wasn't his style. But a small, soft smile appeared on his face, the kind that showed real emotion, not forced confidence. He stood up slowly. His legs were still shaking, but in a different way now. Not from fear, from the shock of what he had just experienced. As he walked off the stage, the clapping continued. A teacher quietly wiped a tear from her eye. A group of boys who had snickered before now exchanged awkward looks, silently acknowledging they had been wrong. When he returned to his seat, the class teacher leaned slightly toward him and whispered, "You played beautifully." He lowered his eyes shyly, his cheeks slightly warm. But inside, something blossomed, something that had been waiting a long time. During the break, students who had never spoken to him came near him. They didn't crowd him or overwhelm him. They simply said things like, "You were amazing. How long have you been practicing?" "That was so good, and I didn't know you could play like that." He didn't know how to respond to so much attention. He just nodded, offering small smiles. His voice stayed soft, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel invisible. He didn't feel like the quiet kid in the background. He felt seen. Later, when the hall was empty and the event was officially over, he walked back to the piano one more time. Not to play, not to perform, just to sit for a moment. The lights were dimmer now, the chairs empty, and the room felt peaceful. He gently placed his fingers on the keys, pressing one soft note. It echoed quietly, almost like the piano was smiling back at him. He whispered a thank you under his breath, not to anyone specific, but to the music, to the courage he found, and to the moment that changed his life. As he walked out of the hall, he felt different. Not louder, not overconfident, but stronger. His teacher later told him that the school wanted him to perform again at the next event. He nodded shyly, but inside he felt a wave of excitement he had never felt before. Suddenly, possibilities seemed bigger. Maybe he could learn more songs. Maybe he could play on bigger stages one day. Maybe he had a place in the world where he didn't need to shout to be heard. On his way home, he walked with a lighter step. He noticed the sky looked a little brighter, even though nothing had changed. Or maybe everything had. The boy who once avoided attention now felt the spark of something new. Belief. Not the kind someone gives you. The kind you build quietly, slowly, piece by piece, until one day it becomes strong enough to shine on its own. His life didn't suddenly turn perfect. People didn't treat him like a celebrity. But one thing had changed forever. He now knew he wasn't just the quiet kid. He wasn't weak. He wasn't someone meant to hide. He was someone with a gift, someone with courage, someone who proved, without saying a single loud word, that talent can come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the quietest people carry the most powerful music inside them. That day stayed with him for years. Every time he sat at a piano after that, he remembered the moment when the whole hall fell silent. The moment when the laughter stopped. The moment when the first note, just one single note, changed everything, and he never forgot the lesson hidden in that moment. Sometimes, all it takes is one brave step, one soft sound, one quiet truth, to change the way the world sees you, and even more important, to change the way you see yourself.